Hi all, welcome to another episode of Labbing It. Today we're going to take a look at configuring the VMware Certificate Authority. Whether you're aware or not, but vSphere comes with its own built-in certificate authority to help certify the resources that you use within vSphere. But what I want to do today is configure the certificate authority to be a subordinate authority to our organizational PKI. So in a previous video, which I'll put the link in the description, we created our own internal PKI. So we configured Microsoft Certificate Services with an offline root CA and a subordinate CA. So we configured a two-tier PKI. So in this video, we're going to set up our certificate authority. So to create an extended chain, if you like, that uses our organizational PKI root certificate as the head of this chain. So let's dive into the environment now, and I'll show you exactly what we're going to be doing. So here you can see right now that we're connected to our vCenter, and as you can see up in the address bar here, it's telling us that we don't have a secure connection, and that's because we don't trust the certificate that is currently being used in vCenter. Now we could actually manually go and actually trust the certificate and install the certificate on our client machine, and that probably be enough to create a assigned connection between client and the vCenter server. But for the purpose of this video, and this is something that I've done many times for many of my customers, we're going to configure the vSphere authority to attach itself to our public key infrastructure. So the first thing we need to do is create a template. So what we're going to do, we're going to log into our internal PKI subordinate CA. And hopefully we can connect without any issues. Just double check that it's running. It's running, but we just can't get a remote connection. That's okay. What I'll do, I might not have remote desktop switched on. I'll just console. Correctly. Okay. So let's open up the certificate authority on our server. So this is the setup that we configured the other day. And if we look at the certificate here, we can see that this is our subordinate CA certificate, and then we've got this root certificate, which is coming from our offline root CA. So that machine's powered off. This is our subordinate certificate, and what we're going to do is we're going to extend the chain to a third link here, which will be our vCenter certificate authority, and all resources within our vSphere environment will be signed off this chain. So it's a really handy way to, I guess, centralize management of the certificates in your environment, so that way everything's all configured through the same chain. So first thing is we need to create a template that we can use. So let's go into manage. Now I'll leave some descriptions again on where I'm sourcing this information from. So this is just from the VMware website on how to process this. Essentially what all we're doing here is creating a new template to use in order to create the request for our vSphere certificate authority to be signed off against the subordinate certificate authority that's part of our two-tier PKI. And the process here is pretty much to copy the existing subordinate certificate authority template by duplicating and these are kind of the settings that we need for our environment. Your environment might be a little bit different, but if you're following along in my labs, this is what we want to go with. And on the General tab, want to publish the certificate in Active Directory, and I might give it a name, so I might just call it vSphere. So we're still running version 6.7, so I'm just going to call it vSphere 6.x. And we just need to check a couple of settings. Now, I'm pretty sure if you've been following along, when you build the certificate authority, the actual settings that we have are already configured. So we just want to make sure that the basic constraints extensions are configured this way. So no changes there. And in here, make this extension critical, and that's exactly what we're looking for in here. So no changes needing to be made. So I'm happy with that. So I'm just going to hit apply and OK. And now we have our vSphere template. So we can close the templates console, come into certificate templates, back in our subordinate authority, and we can right mouse click on certificate templates, new certificate templates issue, and we should see our vSphere 6.x template down there, and then now it's in our usable list. So that's pretty much all we need to do for now in here. So our next step now is to go ahead and create the certificate request. Let's do that now. Close this window. And so we're going to be using a mix of two applications to get this done. So we need PuTTY. I'm sure most of you be quite aware of using PuTTY, so I might just copy this. You can just download this for free from the internet, and also using WinSCP. So this is a really handy tool that allows us to log into the vCenter and actually expose the file system to us, so that we can copy a few files on and off the vCenter appliance. You'll see that as we go along. So let's open up PuTTY. We're going to connect to our vCenter. So and open. Close that behind us and log in with the root account. And we need to set the shell. Log into shell, and we want to enable bash. So that's the command that we need to use there. chsh-s bin bash root. That's going to allow us to use WinSCP to access the vCenter file system. Now we just log into the vCenter file manager, certificate manager, and we can do this following. So that opens up our options here. So the option that we are going for today is option number 2, replace VMCA root certificate with custom signing certificate and replace all certificates. So just to reiterate, we're going to make our vCenter Certificate Authority a subordinate authority to our public key infrastructure setup that we created in a previous video. Once that's configured, then our vCenter and our ESXi hosts will all be signed off against the certificate authority, the VMware Certificate Authority, which essentially is signed off by our internal root CA. So number 2 is what we're going for, and it's going to ask us now to generate the configuration files, which we want to. So this is where we're just going to input some details. The first thing is wanting us to log into the vCenter with the administrator at vSphere.local privileges, which is fine. So I just hit enter and the password. And that's just going to ask for some certificate values. So in our case, country, AU for Australia, so not AUS or anything like that, it's AU. Here we just want the name, I guess, of the certificate authority. So this can be really anything. I might just call it VMCA, VMware Certificate Authority. The organization, so this is the JT Airlines organization unit. So a lot of these values actually don't really matter too much. This is just the information that we're going to see on the certificate. So I'll just call it the IT department and the state. My fictitious organization JT Airlines is based in Melbourne, Victoria. So the state, I'm going to put in Victoria. The locality, Melbourne. Now the IP address of my vCenter goes here. .10.20, 192.168.10.20. This will allow you to access the vCenter via this IP address, and it will be a signed off connection. So obviously sometimes when you, depending on what the certificate, how the certificate is created, you might need to use the common name value or subject alternate name value. And in this case, we can also use the IP address. Yep, some organizations probably would say don't use this. I'm just going to do it just for completing sake. 10.20. This is just an email address. So again, this is just a value that's going to be listed on the certificate. And here we just provide comma separated values for multiple hostname entries. So this is essentially the subject alternate names that we're talking about. So I'm going to do this one. That's the fully qualified domain name. And then I'm also going to use this one as well, just mel-vcsa. So just the DNS name. So essentially this certificate should allow us to connect to the vCenter via the IP address, the fully qualified domain name, and or the DNS name. And here we're just putting the fully qualified domain name again. And that's it. So all the values have been added. Now we just hit number one. So number one, we'll create the request file. So go for number one. And so whereabouts on the vCenter do we want to store the request file and the private key? I just put it in the temp folder. And that's it. So don't close this or don't do anything right now. So just leave this screen as is. Now I'm just going to quickly open up WinSCP. Again, you can download this from the internet. It's an open source product. So I just use the SCP option, and I'm connecting to my vCenter. So this will allow us to see the file structure. And yes, and continue. And now we're in. So on the left hand side, so it just looks like a Windows Explorer. On the left hand side is my client PC that I'm connecting with, and on the right hand side is the actual vCenter appliance. If I just back out to the main root level, I just need to come into the temp folder, and down here I can see the certificate request and the key that I have created. I don't need to do anything with the key. The key is going to stay as is. I'm just going to copy this out onto my desktop. And what I normally do here is I just put it in my downloads folder. And that's it. Now I just want to open up the file. And just something like Notepad will suffice. And here We can see our certificate request. So we're just going to copy the entire contents, what's in this document. I'm just going to hit Control C. Now I'm going to open up. Now, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to use Internet Explorer. So this is the problem using a very old client machine of Windows 7. I need to get this up to Windows 10 in the near future. But what I want to do is connect to, so I installed the certificate web services on my Subordinate Certificate Authority. Again, you can look at a previous video that I created that shows how to configure that. So all I'm doing here, cert srv, I think that should work. It's asking me for some credentials. I didn't expect that. Have a look. Okay. So here I can request a certificate. So request a certificate, and I want to do an advanced certificate request, and then I want to create and submit. I want to use the second option, submit a certificate request by using a base64 encoded CMC, and I will be presented with this screen. First thing I want to do is make sure I see my template that I created, vsphere6.x. It is there. Here I paste in the contents of the certificate request itself that we just copied previously, and hit submit. And I'll choose base64 encoded, and I'll download the certificate and save. Now, if I open up my downloads folder, here's this new certificate that it's created. So let's open it up just quickly so we get an idea of what we've just done. Here we have now VMCA, which is now the certificate authority for my vSphere environment, which has been now successfully signed off against my subordinate CA, which is signed off against the root CA. So here I have a nice valid chain. We're not quite done, obviously. We now need to do just a couple of things. The first thing is actually just to open up the certificate, and I want to go here, so to the subordinate CA. Now you might have this certificate lying around somewhere else, but I'm just going to do all this manually right here. I'm going to copy the certificate to file. I'm going to use base64, and I'm going to call this the MEL sub CA. So I have the MEL sub CA certificate now listed there in my downloads. Then I want to do exactly the same thing with the root CA. So copy the file, base64, MEL root CA. So now I have all three certificates in the chain just available to me here, because what we have to do now is create a single CRT file consisting of all the details of these three certificates. So I'll just close this out. Now there's a real easy way to do this. I'm just going to open up the command prompt, and I'm just going to go into the downloads folder, CD download, document CD downloads, and there I'll see the three certificates there, the CER certs. So all I'm going to do here is now you could do this manually and just create a new file, but I find it easier just to use this command, typed cert new, followed by, and it has to be in this order, so the subordinate CA, and then the root CA. Now if you don't have a subordinate CA, if you only got a single certificate authority in your environment, then you obviously just wouldn't have a you wouldn't be using MEL-sub CA or whatever equivalent you might have or don't have. So it would be just cert new.cert and MEL root CA.cert. And we want to turn this into I'm going to call it melvsa.crt. Done. And now we have this certificate here in a CRT form, which is what we need to present back to vCenter. So back to WinSCP. There we've got the CRT. All I'm going to do now is just move that back into here. As you can see, it's there available. So we need to use this plus the key to fully sign everything off and update our certificates. So back to our PuTTY session. Now that we're ready to go, now we can continue to import custom certificates. So option 1. And now it's asking for the certificate that we just created. So it's located in the temp, and you need to be precise with the lettering. I do believe everything's case sensitive as well. So that's the location of the new certificate. And now it's just asking for the key, and the key has been there all the time, which is VMCA _ issued _ key. So just to note, it's asking for this key here. And hit enter. Now it's just asking, do we want to go and regenerate everything? So this is going to update our VMware Certificate Authority, and then we'll be fully signed off our internal public key infrastructure. So I'm going to go with yes. This process can take a while. This does bring your vCenter temporarily offline, so you will lose access to it while it's happening. So whether or not that's okay to do through business hours or not, you might just need to check internally. But I'm going to go with yes. I'm going to hit enter, and then I'm just going to time lapse the process, because it probably will take about 10 or 15 minutes. Now, I have in the past sometimes come across where it looks like it's working, and if you notice anything about rolling back, that means something's just gone wrong in your certificate, and you might have to start from scratch. There's no harm in starting from scratch and doing it again. When it rolls back, it just puts everything back into its original place. And then you can just go through the process again. The chances are that you might have made a mistake somewhere when you're putting in the values or the properties of the certificate. Probably that's my common issue. So back up here somewhere when putting it in IP addresses and host names and the like. That's where I normally have issues. So anyway, so I'm going to hit yes and let it go. Okay, we are done. So I might just leave everything open and just close this. Just minimize all this. Close that. Let's open up our web browser. So essentially this should really have fixed up access to our vCenter. Let's have a look. And there we go. So now we are properly signed. If we come in here and have a look at the view, and now we can see the chain here. So here we are, melvCA has been signed off by the vSphere Certificate Authority, and the vSphere Certificate Authority has been signed off upwards up the chain. So now we have a proper secure connection, and even now when we go to log in, and if we were to log in with our password, even Google Chrome is going to be excited for us, because look, it's going to say, I'm happy to save your password now. Now, you don't have to, obviously you can or not, but gee, it makes it, when you're running in the lab, it makes life a little easier to get in and out of vCenter. So I'm just going to hit save, and I'm happy with that. So if I now log out and log back in, those credentials are just saved. So now that that's done, the one thing that we've still got to do is update our hosts. So if we have a look at our host certificates, they're still signed off by the old certificate. Here's the issuer. So what we need to do here is, now, I don't think it's going to work straight off the bat. Let me just see. If I hit the renew button and go yes, because that's all you technically need to do. No, we received this error. I don't know if this error still exists in version 7 or version 8, but in 6.7, this was quite annoying, because what happens is, my understanding is that certificates that are created by the vCenter are predated 24 hours, and that is why we can't renew the certificate. So there is just a setting to change to fix that. Now, just trying to remember if I think it's in the advanced settings. If I go edit settings and just filter out, I'm looking for cert mgmt .cert.minutes before. Yep, it's set to 1440. Pretty sure if you just change this to, say, 10 and go save, and now we go back to our host, and then we try to renew the certificate. Yeah, it's a lot more happier. So it's going in there and it's creating the certificate, and as you can see already now, the issuer is our VMCA, and it's got the details that we added in there. So just to double check, just so you can see, so we can go into mail ESXi, and now that's properly signed off as well. And instead of mail VCSA as the object, it's now mail ESXi. And just to prove that we needed to do that, if we go into mail ESX2, which we haven't updated, that's still got a problem certificate. So the process is pretty straightforward. Renew and yes, and renew and yes, and that will just go away and configure those certificates. It's come up with a bit of a warning message. I suspect we just need to reconfigure HA. Sometimes you have to just turn HA off and back on again just to get it all happy. I'll just wait for this to complete. Just while it's happening now, be sure that that if you've got any software out there that is linking into vCenter and you've had to provide that software or application the vCenter details, a username and password, the chances are you may have to go in there and do that again, because now the certificate has changed. The connection to it will no longer work, and in my lab, the Veeam server is going to be one that I'm going to need to update. I see this issue happen many times when the certificate for vCenter changes. It breaks our backups of our virtual machines. So I quickly log into Veeam. I've got my vCenter here. All I do is go into Properties, Next, and Apply, and it's just going to tell me that the certificate is here, and I'll click Continue. And that will pretty much sort that out. So when the backups run later on tonight, not going to have any issues there with Veeam. Now we're all done. A little refresh, that sorted itself out. So that's it. So yeah, so hopefully that's been helpful. This is a real common job that I do for some customers of mine when it comes to renewing vCenter certificates. I think it's a really good practice to do. There are different ways you can go about it. This is not the only way, but this is just a common way, just to integrate it into your organization's public key infrastructure. So yeah, hopefully this has been informative. If there are any issues, please leave a message in the chat. Otherwise, yeah, thanks for watching.